I'm not sure about you, but when it was announced or when I heard that the Ravens had signed a wide receiver named Russell Gage, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't know a whole lot about him. I had more questions than answered. And at this point, I'll really only be able to respond to or try to address one of those questions here. First of all, the stats sure do look nice from 2020 to 2022. But most of us, most Ravens fans, most NFL fans will often discount things if it didn't happen recently, if it didn't happen last week or last year, let alone plays that were, in this case, made on a team that was quarterbacked by Tom Brady. Probably more important than Gage's skills, potential impact, and health at this point for most of us fans is the first obvious question: why? Does Gage's signing have anything to do with Rashad Bateman's injury report from Monday afternoon or Monday evening, I guess? Bateman apparently hurt his ribs or side while making a touchdown catch in practice. I guess it was with a little less than 10 minutes left in the practice, so who knows the severity? He didn't participate Tuesday. Are the Ravens dissatisfied or unimpressed with other players, other potential guys that are at receiver that would be the fourth or fifth or sixth guy to possibly be on the field, like a Tyler Wallace or a Hardy? It's also possible that Gage is just a guy who is looked at as offering low-cost value, low-cost talent, proven talent. He sat out 2023 following a training camp injury with the Bucs about a year ago today. I think it was a year ago on the 8th. He's a good player, for real. After watching 4 or 5 games worth of film, I do wonder if that last part is the most simple explanation, that the Ravens wanted competition, as much depth as possible, and in this case, Russell Gage comes at a low potential cost after not playing last season. He does have significant stats to focus on if you want to. He had 51 catches on 70 targets in 2022. Keep in mind as well that not just playing with Tom Brady, but Mike Evans, Godwin, Fournette, and a lot of other guys who got the football often. 73% catch percentage, Gage that is, 5 touchdowns. Sounds like a similar situation to me to the Ravens offense in 2024 in a lot of ways. You got a deep group at tight end, wide receiver, and running back, and someone, in this case, Gage, is efficient and versatile enough to be able to fit in when given the opportunity. In a lot of ways, the description that I just gave for Russell Gage sounds a lot like Nelson Aguilar. And that's a comparison that someone made almost immediately in our Discord when the signing was announced. The film here is very interesting. I focused on 4 games from 2022 and then 1 from 2021. Now, like I said, that 2022 Bucs team also had Julio Jones and a rookie tight end, Cade Otton. So there were factors to consider in terms of judging Gage's ability. If you don't get opportunity, you can't produce. Of course, if you don't get open, even when you do get those opportunities, you won't get targets. When you do get playing time, if you're not getting open, Tom Brady's not going to throw you the football. He was 51 of 70 with Brady, and there was other quarterbacks mixed in there as well. In 2022, I'll be honest with you, I like his game. The versatility, like I said, he looks like a guy who can line up anywhere. And the film kind of, I think, shows you that. We'll have 3 segments of film here. This is focusing on catches over the middle, oftentimes on third down. Another thing that, to be honest with you, that impressed me, and hopefully you notice as well, is that he's got some wins against some pretty good corners. A.J. Terrell from the Falcons and CTB from the Bengals. And now, obviously, it was 2022, so I think CTB was a rookie, but nonetheless, it speaks highly of a guy that the Ravens brought in after camp started. We're almost to the first preseason game. I do think there's something to be said about this time period when the Ravens sign players. How many guys they have signed late and had an impact. Gage, for some of us, for some Ravens fans, would not appear to be one of them because he's a wide receiver. And also because he has so many guys ahead of him, presumably on the depth chart. Bateman, Flowers, Aguilar, Walker. But first of all, it's a long season, a 17-game season. Second of all, if you can keep someone around of this talent level, this proven talent, I think he's got 244 or 246 catches in his career, pretty high catch percentage. If a Bateman or an Aguilar goes down, Gage has the versatility to be able to walk into either of those positions and do the job. Is he going to be an all-pro? Is he going to be a pro bowler? No, I don't get into those conversations, to be honest with you. I just look at, can a guy play? Can he contribute? And to me, that's what the film shows in this case here. Another thing to talk about, he'll certainly be labeled a possession receiver. He already has, I'm sure. But he wins on contested catches often. He's averaged, I think, 10.2 or 10.4 yards per catch in his career. So I'm okay with the possession receiver label being attached to him. But he's capable of moments of brilliance in the end zone. There are guys on offense and defense who shine in the red zone. I actually talked about Jackson, the safety that we signed from the Bears, a free agent that we signed who used to play with the Bears, being one of them. A safety who plays well in the red zone, and at least in the film that I had. Whereas between the 30s, there was maybe more space available, more vertical space, that Jackson was less attached to receivers. There was more space when he was covering someone. And he arrived later on contested throws in between the 30s. But when you got down in the red zone, he looked like a different player. Does that necessarily apply to Russell Gage from me watching 4 games? No. But there is significant evidence of it that he's somewhat similar to Jackson, except he's on the offensive side of the ball. He makes himself available and appears more dangerous in constricted space. Let me rephrase that. He appears very capable of making contested catches and getting himself open in constricted space. I have no idea if that will hold true over a 17-game season or however many games he plays with the Ravens. It's just a dynamic that I noticed. He's really good in the red zone. For a guy who's only 6 foot tall, I think he seems to play bigger. His hands are very reliable to me. I'm impressed, I don't know about you, that the Ravens were able to bring in a guy of this caliber so late in the game. So let's do this from 2020 to 2022. He has had 189 catches over that 3-year period. So you're talking about averaging 60-plus catches a game, 63 to be precise, on 273 targets. So a 69% catch percentage. Additional to that, he's at 118 first downs during that time period. I think those are significant numbers. I'm not a stats guy, but they bridge 2 teams and 2 different quarterbacks. Played with the Falcons, who had originally drafted him in 2018, and then the Tampa Bay Bucks in Brady's final year of 2022. Suffered, like I said, an injury last year. I think it was a patellar tendon knee to his left knee, I believe, in training camp last year with the Bucks. Didn't play in 2023 at all, hence the stats don't follow through there. If he did play in 2023, I suspect he may not be available right now. I think he would have been on a roster. I think that's an important point or designation to make. We're not talking about a guy who wouldn't have been in demand. If he weren't a wide receiver and the Ravens had just signed someone of this caliber at another position, I think most of us as Ravens fans will be more comfortable with the comment I'm going to give next. This reminds me of some of the signings that the Ravens have pulled off on the defensive side in recent years. You got a player with 244 career catches, 14 touchdowns, who's only 28. I think he turned 28 7 months ago in January. It reminds me of the following signings: Van Noy, Darby, Houston, Clowney. Now look, you can't place Gage, though, in the category of former number 1 overall picks like Clowney, or guys who won multiple Super Bowls like Van Noy, or someone who was nearing 100 sacks at the point that we signed him, in the case of Justin Houston. I do think it's a negative way of thinking to say the Ravens can't either develop or sign good wide receivers. The front office doesn't make good decisions with wide receivers. Look back to last year. It reminds me of Aguilar signing in so many ways. That was decried in the moment immediately by more people than I would care to admit. But he ended up producing 35 catches on 45 targets, incredibly high catch percentage, 4 touchdowns. Gage, if he's healthy, looks like a guy who could give you that if you needed him to. He may not get the opportunity because the Ravens may not need him to. He's lined up outside often enough for me to say that it looks like he can do this effectively, and that's why I'm showing you some of the film here. Is he a 60-catch guy, 70-catch guy, 80-catch guy? Well, no, not on this roster. We don't need him to do that. The Bucks didn't need him to do that in 2022. I'll be honest with you, I was a little confused when I started watching the films. Like, how did I not know who this player was because the film looked so good to me. Turns out, when the Ravens played the Bucs in 2022, he was inactive. You recall the Ravens go down to Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football, and they win a game 27-22. Very weird offensive game for the Ravens in the first half. I think they threw the ball 25 times and then just destroyed the Bucs up front in the second half with the run game. Ravens won 27-22, like I said, in a game that really wasn't as competitive as it looked like in that final tally. So not knowing who he was, I kind of forgave myself because I was like, okay, he didn't play against us, so I didn't see film. I think he missed 4 or 5 weeks in a row. Nonetheless, he's a pretty good football player, especially for someone who's around right before the first preseason game. That last year with the Bucs, played 13 games, 51 catches, so you're talking about basically 4 receptions per game. If you just go look at the stats, game-by-game breakdown, he had 8 catches and 2 touchdowns against the Bengals that year. The Bengals, by the way, made the AFC Championship game. He also had 12 catches on 13 targets, a lot of short targets, mind you, against the Packers early in the season. 2 100-yard games the year before with the Falcons in 2021. Do the Ravens need him to produce that much? Well, hopefully not. That is not meant in a derogatory way towards Russell Gage. Hopefully Bateman, Aguilar, Flowers, and Walker are all guys who play a lot and are healthy, and we don't necessarily need him to contribute. But he looks like a guy who you can turn to in the event that someone goes down for a week or 2 or more. If he does even make the team and get on the field, do I expect him to have the same number of catches and targets as he had 2020 to 2022? No, I would not, because the Ravens have so much talent on offense. The ball's going to be spread around a lot. But there's certain guys like this who show up and they produce. He did it in Tampa Bay. I don't know what's going to happen with Bateman. Hopefully he's not seriously injured. It doesn't appear to be, but if you've ever fallen on a football or maybe been stretched out and then fallen on something, then that can hurt, but it sounds like it was a catch, so he wouldn't have been stretched out with his arms. Sounds like he would have been cradling the football and just fell on top of it, been unable to turn while finishing the catch. It sounds to me like a smart signing, no matter what. Whether Bateman is or is not hurt at all, whether they trust some of the younger guys, Wallace, Hardy, and others to possibly be able to contribute. Russell Gage looks like a guy who can play, reliable, dependable. The high catch percentage is always the first thing I look for. When you do get opportunities, in this case 70 in 2022, or 273 over a 3-year period, you got to be able to convert. And 69, 70% catch efficiency catches my eye every time. The Ravens have some other guys who were at that number last year because our passing game was so efficient. I think Russell Gage can help. Can he help over a 17-game period? No idea. Do I think it's realistic to look at him and say I could see him contributing 3 or 4 times this year mightily in an important win? Yes, I actually think that. It's the same thing I said when we signed Nelson Aguilar. It looks like a very similar signing, except the body style of receiver was slightly different. Aguilar earlier in his career was a little bit bigger and thicker than Russell Gage, who I think is 6 foot, 185 pounds. I appreciate you guys' time, man. Let me know if you enjoyed the film study and some of my comments about Russell Gage possibly being signed to make up for Bateman or others being injured or being out. A nice security blanket, if you will, at what I would presume is a really, really low price. If you enjoyed the video, please consider grabbing a link to this and sharing it out on social media so other Ravens fans can enjoy it as well. Appreciate you guys' time.